Right here in the Middle East and the U.S. in a way. Sure. One link that really ties them together. Evangelical Christians are a growing political force affecting policy decisions around the world, including right here in this region. And one clear indication of their increasing influence was the warm reception given an evangelical delegation earlier this month by a country where open practice of Christianity is actually against the law, Saudi Arabia.
The delegation met with Crown Prince Mohammed Bin Salman, discussed many subjects, including the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. This as MBS lobbies to limit the damage the affair has caused the kingdom and to him personally, even as new revelations emerge about the brutal assassination almost every day. Well, with us now is Joel Rosenberg. He's a best-selling author, and he's the founding chairman of the Joshua Fund charity. And he took part in that delegation that met with MBS in Riyadh, and also was the first ever such group welcomed in the United Arab Emirates. And Joel, I just want to make clear, even though, as I said, you've discussed many subjects, including Khashoggi, that wasn't actually the purpose of your visit. What was the purpose?
Right. Well, we'd been invited by the Saudi government several months before, specifically as evangelical Christians, to come and talk about religious issues. I'm sure there's issues that the Saudis want to talk to us about, but we want to talk about religious freedom, the fact that there aren't any churches there, extremism that's being taught, and so forth. And then the Khashoggi story blew up internationally.
Well, so I guess let's just start with that and get that out of the way. I understand that Mohammed Bin Salman was asked about that. What was the reaction? What was the answer that he gave you guys?
Sure. Well, as the head of the delegation, I didn't see any other way than to start with that. Right. One of the questions, however, was, who were we walking in to go see? We'd been invited. We accepted the invitation, even though many people had sort of waved us off and said, don't do it. But who are we going to see? Someone who's maligned and misunderstood as a leader, or the Godfather, right? Saddam Hussein. But nevertheless, we decided if he's going to invite us, we've got to lead with a question everybody would want to ask. And which is what we talked about. You were being blamed as being responsible for the Khashoggi murder. Could you talk to us about that? Could you talk to us about how you're going to handle this situation? How are you going to get back on track? You've got this Vision 2030 plan. Right. This could unravel everything, so let's talk about it. And we talked about it at length.
And give us just brief your impression of what he said on the subject.
Yeah, well, he didn't flinch. He leaned right forward. He got right into it. He said, "Look, this is a heinous act." That's the line that he gave us. A heinous act. He said it's a terrible mistake. It's a crime. But I can't let this get us off track. I've already arrested 18 people. I fired 5. And he went into a pretty aggressive argument that he was going to bring these people to justice. That he said specifically, we came back to it again. He said, look, I didn't do this, but people close to me, they did it because maybe they love the country so much they thought they were doing something that I would appreciate. I did not. Right. He said, but what's the difference between us and Iran or Turkey or Russia? He said, when somebody does something horrible, we arrest them. We're going to prosecute them.
Did you find him credible in your sort of, personal experience?
I mean, sitting there, yes. After a few moments, I did not feel like I was in physical danger as a Jew. Yeah. As an American, as an Israeli, as an evangelical. I know that's a lot of identities to mix together.
But no, of boxes that are risky in Saudi Arabia to
every single one.
On.
And at one point, I brought that up with him. But just to finish your question, look, time will tell. It'll all come out, and we'll know. There's all this talk about the tapes from inside the consulate. John Bolton, the national security advisor in Washington, says the tapes do not implicate MBS. So, look, we're going to know in time. But there is a larger issue for Christians. I don't mean larger like murder's not important. It's horrendous. It's horrific. But the question is, how do you move forward when there's so many issues that the U.S., the region wants to talk about?
Well, let's talk about religious freedom. It would be understating matters to say that Saudi Arabia's record on religious freedom has been totally unacceptable, I would imagine, to certainly to the evangelical community. What did he have to say about that?
Absolutely. Well, and this is why we didn't cancel. There was a case to cancel, but we thought, look, this is the first time in 300 years that the Saudi family has invited followers of Jesus Christ to come and sit in the palace. If we cancel for every Christian. We asked him, we said, historically you have Christians operating in Arabia, and you have churches historically, but you don't allow any now. Would you reconsider that? And he actually dealt with that directly. He said, no, not now. But then he divided it into two pieces. He said, the reason I'm not going to do it now, anytime soon, is because this would be a gift to al-Qaeda. They would use this moment to blow up the churches and to attack, and this would not make life better for the Saudi people. But he then said, look, the question is in a specific hadith that says there can be no two religions on the peninsula, and that means only Islam. So he says, I've asked my scholars, Muslim scholars, to say, is the Arabian Peninsula issue, in Arabic, that's Arabian island. What does that mean? Does it only mean Mecca and Medina? In that case, he said, maybe in time we can allow churches. Or is it wider?
I want to ask you then a little bit bigger picture. Something we follow very closely here on the Rundown is the Gulf, the Middle East, the relationship both with the United States and with Israel. And there's a lot of buzz about a so-called warming between the Gulf states and Israel. We saw a series of very public visits over the last couple of weeks, very unusual. Both in your time in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia, did you get a hint of that?
We spent quite a bit of time asking him about Arab-Israeli relation questions and Saudi-Israeli questions. We can tell you what we told him, but this was the only topic in 2 hours of conversation that he said, I'm asking you to not go out and repeat the conversation. He was fairly candid with us, but he didn't. He asked us not to.
You did discuss it. You just can't repeat the content.
We did, and we said there's 3 things you need to know as you build a relationship with evangelicals. In America, there are more than 60 million evangelical Christians.
Right.
The number one thing that we want to talk to you about is that how much evangelicals love Israel and the Jewish people. It's important that you know that as you think about this region.
Right.
Second, Jesus commanded us to love our neighbor, and the Palestinians are our neighbors. So it's not that we love one and we don't love the other. We want life to get better for the Palestinians. We're not coming to you with a plan, but just know that as a value.
Without revealing then the contents of what he said, as you promised him, can you describe whether you were surprised at what you heard from the powerful Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia on the issue?
Yes, and there was one more piece we said. We said 60 million American evangelicals are praying, who will be the next Arab leader to make peace with Israel? Now, I would say, since I can't talk about what he actually said, the fact that we were there, number one, the fact that I was there, I said to him, look, I was born in April of 1967 at a time where the Arabs were saying, let's throw the Jews into the sea, right? Let's wipe out Israel. So the fact that I'm sitting here as a Jew, as an evangelical, as an Israeli, as an American, that's a mind boggler, but still, it's touching to me because I never imagined this. I think it's one of the signals that we're moving in the right direction.
All right, Joel Rosenberg, a fascinating window into a very rare opportunity in the Gulf.